Chapter 172, EP 33, Reading Again, 3. My mother was silent for a moment. The silence cheered me up a bit. The fact that my mother expected me to love her and the idea that I could hurt her feelings excited me. However, my mother spoke in a tone that sounded like she had expected it. I see. I still wanted to try it. It could have ended your fate. In any case, you still have a lot of lives left. Don't speak like you are doing this for me. I love you. I got goosebumps. Why was she suddenly saying this? What does this mean? I am your mother. I looked at my smiling mother and one corner of my heart ached. Did she really believe that such words were acceptable? A decade's worth of suffering alone couldn't be denied because of these words. I glared at my mother. Mother, love. I didn't use lie detection on her. Sometimes there were such words in the world. Even if it was true, it was painful enough to be called false. I sighed and said, "It's too late." I know. Then why? I just wanted to say it once. I don't think I've ever told you before. We fell silent and didn't say anything for a while. Only the second hand of the wall clock told me that time was passing by. It was like a page with nothing on it. Like a writer squeezing out my first sentence, I barely managed to open my mouth. How was your life in prison? You often came to see me. Is there a need? You didn't tell me anything. Why didn't you say anything? I went to see you so many times. I didn't hate my mother from the beginning. Even when my mother killed my father. Even when she went to jail. Even when my relatives rushed to take our assets and I was treated like a leftover product. I didn't hate or blame my mother. How can a person be so shameless? The reason why I hated my mother was simple. Why did you remain silent? And why did you write such a story? Someone might say this: you became rich. Isn't it good that she sold the book? I didn't know if the royalties from my mother helped my life. My relatives always treated me like I wasn't a person. I had a really hard time. Whenever I went to school, walked on the streets or met someone, it seemed like everyone was talking about me. It was the same when I moved schools. Every time, I was the son of a murderer. Those who had never experienced it would never know. The world was tenacious. The reporters stood in front of my house and it felt like all eyes in the world were chasing me. Maybe, just maybe, I could have endured it. It might have been okay if my mother had said something to me. If she told me to endure it, I could have. If only my mother had told me she was on my side, even if she sold our story for money. The fourth wall is shaking violently. The stigma, self-rationalization LV2, has been activated. I looked at my mother. I hadn't misunderstood. My mother sold our lives to earn money. Then my mother opened her mouth. I wanted to know. Know what? The truth. What is the truth? Mother, didn't you kill father? You don't know the story. I know it very well. Since separating from you, I looked over my memories again and again. In other words, I read it again. I became absorbed in the characters of the novel because of my mother. Dokja. From now on, I will read all of this again. Your father, he did something wrong and died. This was self-defense. Understood? I read it again hundreds, thousands and even tens of thousands of times. No, I replayed it so many times that I couldn't even tell it was true anymore. It was enough for my father to die. He was a gambling addict and violent towards his family. Our family would have been in danger if he remained. The mother watched me and nodded. Yes, I remember it well. So why are you angry? I tried to ask my mother several times. Why didn't you run away with me? Why did you leave the child alone? Why didn't you come see me after you were released? The questions piled up inside me and I got the answer on my own. The fourth wall's shaking has subsided. This was a fear created by the answer. It was an answer that I tried to erase. I was afraid that once the answer was given, I wouldn't be able to accept it. In the meantime, my mother had been repeatedly opening and closing her mouth before finally being able to speak. It is too late to say anything. Yes, I knew. Many constellations have sponsored you 5,000 coins for your family history. This was sufficient for the damn drama. The constellation, Prisoner of the Golden Headband, is thirsty from your sweet potato. The constellation, Demon-like Judge of Fire, suggests that you think again. The constellation, Poked Out His Eyes, is smiling in an insidious manner. This role didn't suit me in the first place. Why do you keep changing the original novel? My mother changed the topic. If you let it flow like the original and let people die, the scenarios wouldn't have been so difficult. I have to change it. Mother, you know that Yu Junghyuk can't reach the ending in the third regression. Many constellations are frustrated by the filtering. The story about the original novel was filtered by the constellations. The ending? Yes. The ending. You are struggling just for that? You're not crazy. The ending of this story is important to me. It was this world that kept me alive while you were gone. It was thanks to the novel that I could survive the last few years without my mother and father. You can never understand. 3 ways to survive in a ruined world. I didn't know what the author intended with this title. However, this title was reality to me, not a metaphor. It was because for me, this had become a ruined world a long time ago. I read this novel on a daily basis and survived. Thus, I couldn't give up on this story. My mother refuted, this isn't a novel. There is no ending like everyone lived happily ever after, in reality. I will see it through to the end. In addition, when did I say I wanted that ending? Stop. This world is crazy. It isn't something you can achieve because you know the future. Don't you already know this? The next scenarios. Stop. It was pointless to keep arguing with my mother. Just tell me what you want. Why did you call me here? Stay here. Yes, I thought she would say this. It was just like my mother. Why would I do such a thing? I can't lose my son again. I will somehow do the following scenarios. Save it. I raised my energy. Be honest. You think I will be a hindrance? I don't know what your purpose is, but I won't ask you anything. For the first time, an unfamiliar emotion crossed my mother's face. She looked sad. Sad? What qualifications did she have to feel like this? Who do you really resemble? A wave of magic power rose in my mother's body as she spoke. I dislike this method, but it can't be helped. Some constellations like this fighting in a family. Some constellations who value filial piety dislike this situation. The furniture of the house was swept away by the magical storm, causing Han Suyong to notice and run inside. Kim Dokja. The incarnation of John Wuchi, Cho Youngran, was also behind Han Suyong. The living room quickly changed into a confrontational situation. Cho Youngran was preparing a trick while my mother gazed at me with serene eyes. John Wuchi's techniques were tricky, but I could somehow defend against them. The problem was my mother's side. I didn't yet know who my mother's sponsor was. This was just before my mother's ability was revealed. The exclusive skill, bookmark, is activated. Selecting the 4th bookmark, Lycaean Isparang. The exclusive skill, Way of the Wind LV, 10, +1, is activated. Way of the Wind reached its limit and the whole room was caught in a magical storm. I condensed the winds and destroyed the entire living room. Then I escaped from the house with Han Suyong. As dark smoke covered my field of view, I told Han Suyong. I will finish this right away, so get ready. Understood. Han Suyang started to generate a powerful black fire in her hand. I immediately changed the bookmark. I will choose the 5th bookmark, Kyrios Rodgrame. The combo of miniaturization and electrification followed after Way of the Wind. The fastest and most efficient way to overpower my mother was to use the greatest skill I had. However, the moment I was about to use the skill, dozens of people appeared through the smoke. They surrounded me and spoke in fervent voices. You've misunderstood everything. Please. You have to stay here. They were my mother's subordinates. Dozens of women wearing prison uniforms looked at me with sympathetic expressions. Han Suyang shouted, "What is this?" The surprised Han Suyang poured the black flames towards them, but they were scattered in all directions by John Wuchi's defense. Cho Youngran shouted, "Kim Dokja. Stop. Sukyung is doing this for you." It was my mother who blocked their mouths. She raised a finger to her mouth, telling them not to say anything. Then a grand aura started to emerge from my mother's body. Sparks formed due to the excessive use of probability. It was a more intense synchronization than anything I had seen before. My mother was obviously overdoing it. The sponsor of incarnation, Lee Suk-young, has revealed her modifier. The constellation Founder's Mother feels deep sadness towards you. The Founder's Mother? Oh my God. Don't tell me. The constellation Founder's Mother says that your strength is a threat to the Korean Peninsula scenario. The constellation Founder's Mother says that she won't take your life if you don't rebel. I hastily used miniaturization and electrification at the same time. The energy of the old land has sealed your skills. My vision became dim, as if I had entered a dark cave. Power was extinguished from my body and I became an ordinary human. The helplessness of a small animal captivated me. The energy of the old land seals your value. I knew this stigma. There was only one story regarding sealing on the Korean Peninsula. I never thought you could use this. Yes, it was strange I hadn't thought about it. This was the Korean Peninsula. Yet there was one nebula that hadn't contacted me yet. I should have made contact with them first, but I hadn't got close to them at this point. I told you, I love you. My mother smiled while waving a bronze bell in my hand. The Founder's Mother. One of the highest-ranking constellations of Hongik and one of the most well-known stories on this land. My mother's sponsor was Ungnyo Superscript 1, mother of Dangun Wangium. I sighed and said, "Okay. I surrender." What? Hey. Kim Dokja. Just wait here. You can't win anyway. A sense of exhaustion filled my body. Now I was no different from an ordinary person. Putting aside your sponsor, how did you get the 8-beaded bell? I stared at the bronze bell in my mother's hand. The 8-beaded bell was one of the 3 heavenly seals of Dangun's myth. It was one of the greatest relics of the Korean Peninsula and had the ability to seal the story of another person. No matter how I thought about it, there was no way to get this star relic through normal methods at this point. My mother must have paid a price to get it. I will let you go once it is time. Just stay here for now. Finally, my mother and the wanderers disappeared. Han Suyang and I were trapped in the mechanical gateway array method. I was able to guess where my mother had gone. Maybe she went to see Yu Jonghyuk. I didn't want to imagine the catastrophe that would happen if they met. Shit, what now? How are we going to get out of here? Han Suyang asked as she tried to break the mechanical gateway array method. My skills as a constellation were sealed, so it was impossible to destroy straight away. Well, this was with my own power. I thought it over. There is one way. What is it? There is a presence that can break the mechanical gateway array method. What? Who? If I called him, the seal would somehow be broken. Originally, it was a constellation I didn't dare call, but now it was unknown. I pulled out Ganpyeongwi. I saved it for an important time and now it was the only thing I could believe in. The special option of the Ganpyeongwi, Echo of the Stars, has been activated. Echo of the Stars allows you to ask for help from a historical grade constellation. I will call the constellations. In the flow of the stars, the historical grade constellations hear your voice. I called out the modifier of the constellation. The status of this constellation is too high. 5 points on the sky disk are required for this constellation. Will you accept this? There were only 5 points left because I had used the rest on calling the Big Dipper and the nation's independence activist. Now this constellation required all the remaining star points on the Ganpyeongwi. It was necessary because this being's strength already surpassed the historical grade rank. The operation of the stars has begun. In the darkness of the deep night sky, a solitary star was shining. I declared towards him. Goryo's first sword, I need your strength. Chapter 173, EP 33, reading again, 4. Sparks wrapped around my body as I felt the signs of a probability storm. This was a big burden for a single constellation not of the narrative grade to bear. I thought the records of how Cheok Jungyeong faced an army alone were exaggerated. However, rather than an exaggeration, the stories had been reduced. In fact, Cheok Jungyeong had become much stronger than what was written in Earth's records after becoming a constellation. In other words, there were sword masters who would become nervous just hearing about this constellation. Still, I had to endure it. If I couldn't withstand the spirit of Cheok Jungyeong, I couldn't break the 100 days seal. Your status is currently sealed. Your main skills are currently sealed. Time remaining, 100 days. The 100 days seal, which could be carried out by the 3 highest beings of the constellation, Hongik, was the highest grade seal that sealed up the target's abilities. Eat garlic and mugwort and endure for 100 days. Of course, this seal wasn't necessarily a bad thing. If I could eat garlic and mugwort for 100 days, I could receive Wanan's blessing and wake up the potential of my body. However, now I didn't have enough time. Han Soo-young watched the garlic and mugwort pouring from the sky and asked, "Hey, isn't it almost done? The power is so strong that it is hard to control. Just wait." I took a deep breath and controlled my magic power. Cheok Jungyeong lent me strength in response to my call but didn't say anything in his true voice. He just handed me some of his strength, as if saying, "Try it if you are confident." As a result, I had been controlling the story that had been running wild for 30 minutes. It seemed like my whole body would burst. I watched the grumbling Han Soo-young and suddenly became annoyed. This is all because of you. This wouldn't have happened if you didn't use me as a shield. I didn't do it on purpose. Do you expect me to believe that? Based on what you have always done. It seemed like many complaints had piled up and I couldn't help nagging. How many minutes had passed? Han Soo-young slowly got fed up and shouted, "Ah, I apologize. Yes, I used you as a shield. What do you want me to do?" I wanted to say she was brazen-faced but then a presence suddenly intervened. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon interrupts with a cough. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon says that Han Soo-young never used you as a shield. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon says your death is your responsibility. Han Soo-young shouted, "Hey, you shut up and stay still. Saying unnecessary. What does he mean? It is nonsense. Don't worry about it." The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon claims that Han Soo-young didn't protect your heart to protect your Black Fire Dragon. My Black Fire Dragon? That's why I... Han Soo-young hesitated before starting to talk. I mean, John Wuchi's attack flew to that place. Huh. I was so dumbfounded that I forgot the important situation and sighed. Han Soo-young hesitated as she stared into my eyes and bit her lips. That, You would be a bit unhappy if you lost that function, so. I shifted the direction. That's why it hit my heart. Well, there is such a story. It was an absurd story. Han Soo-young didn't wait to see how I accepted it and added swiftly. I didn't have any strange thoughts. Don't be mistaken. The black flame dragon bastard was shouting that I should protect the whale. The constellation Abyssal Black Flame Dragon is looking at his constellation with embarrassment and agitation. I sighed lightly and said, I don't care about that. Just protect my heart well next time. Han Soo-young made a surprised look at my words and nodded. An awkward atmosphere briefly flowed. Han Soo-young seriously considered something and opened her mouth. By the way, Kim Dokja, I have a question. What is it? Why does he call it the Black Flame Dragon? That guy, he was very small when he was a child. Lee Soo-kyung was immersed in her memories as she gazed at the dark and desolate plains of Dark Castle. How much time did it take to get here? There were no easy scenarios and all plans were half distorted or broken. How many times had she experienced the crisis of death due to insufficient information? It was especially dangerous when I met Nirvana. The reincarnator. Lee Soo-kyung never thought that such a being could exist in the world. Well, it was abnormal for a novel to become reality in the first place. She turned around and saw Cho Young-ran, the incarnation of John Wu-chi. Your Majesty. Stop it with that title. Soo-kyung SSI. Cho Young-ran had a complicated gaze. It is no wonder, Lee Soo-kyung thought. Cho Young-ran was the only wanderer who knew all her circumstances. You didn't need to fight him. If you were honest about why you wrote the book. Being honest is harder than fighting. Especially when it is between a parent and child. In fact, she had the conversation with Kim Dokja because of Cho Young-ran's suggestion. Cho Young-ran kept pressing. Now is the age where he can accept the truth. He isn't the 10-year-old boy you knew. For me, he is just a child. It doesn't matter if he is 30 or 40 years old. It is the pride of a parent. Pride. That's right, it was pride. Lee Soo-kyung lowered her eyes. At first, I tried to show courage. I tried to tell the truth. However, after I looked into his eyes, it felt like an excuse for me to enter his life. Reality was different from a novel. A wounded person might be saved, but a wounded person wouldn't heal that easily. I don't know if that child really needs the truth. Maybe it was what I needed. I didn't want to stay as a bad mother. She became crooked herself to protect Kim Dokja. She became like this as a result of her own love. Incarnation Kim Dokja will be killed by the person he loves most. Lee Soo-kyung recalled the moment when she first heard of her child's fate from Usanga. The fate of Olympus would surely be realized. The child will understand you one day. In order to find out how to save her son, Lee Soo-kyung gave 3 days and 3 nights to the founder's mother. 3 SSS-grade items were offered as a tribute to Hongik, and she also gave 20 years of her life. In return, she was able to steal a line of fate that Olympus had hidden. If he doesn't go to the next scenario, Incarnation Kim Dokja can live. Lee Soo-kyung smiled. Have all the troops gathered? Yes. They are all assembled. On the edge of the plains, the group of wanderers she led were gathered. They were all here because they believed in her. Lee Soo-kyung opened the main scenario window. Main scenario number 9, 73rd Demon King. Category, Main. Difficulty level, SS. Clear conditions, you are eligible to participate in the last scenario of Dark Castle. Gather 4 rankers to go up to the 3rd floor of Dark Castle and enter the final scenario. Time limit, 30 days. Compensation, 100,000 coin. Failure, death. Asterisk your current Dark Castle ranking is 2nd place. Asterisk only incarnations within the top 10 of the rankings can challenge the final scenario with you. Lee Suk-young glanced at Cho Youngran. She currently had 2 of the top 10 rankers. They were Cho Youngran and Lee Bok-soon. In order to complete the scenario and challenge the final floor of Dark Castle, 2 more rankers were needed. Cho Youngran said, "They are coming." An army was pushing from the other side of the Abyss Plains. They came from Paradise. She saw a familiar face at the head of the army. Lee Suk-young greeted one of the people in the opposing force. "You Sangha SSI. It's been a while." "Ah. Really, I'm really glad you are alive. Dr. SSI. We can talk about it later." Lee Suk-young looked at the party across from her. From left to right, it is Lee Hyun-sung, Shin Yu-sung, Jung Hee-won, Lee Jae-hai and Lee Gil-young. She heard about Lee Hyun-sung, Shin Yu-sung and Lee Jae-hai from Kim Dokja, but she had never heard of Lee Gil-young and Jung Hee-won. Perhaps they were new people her son had recruited, regardless of the original novel. It would have been a lot easier if there were only original characters. Stupid fool. As a child, Kim Dokja did many unpredictable things. Therefore, Lee Suk-young had believed that her child would become an artist. The King of Wanderers. The voice came from the person she had been waiting for. It was a person she heard a lot about from her son while she was in prison. She never imagined she would see him in person. Yoo Jung-hyuk. Supreme King Yoo Jung-hyuk. The protagonist of this story opened his mouth. "Why did you want to see me here?" "I have decided to end this scenario." Yoo Jung-hyuk glanced next to Lee Suk-young and asked, "Are you also collecting the 4 Heavenly Kings?" "4 Heavenly Kings? You need 4 rankers to go to the next scenario. Don't you know?" "Ah, yes, that's right. I'm collecting them. I guess they are called the 4 Heavenly Kings. I can't keep up with the trendy words of children these days." Yoo Jung-hyuk's eyebrows twitched at Lee Suk-young's words. "You have a twisted mind. You are a shrewd child." The eyes of the 2 people met and waves of energy bounced wildly. Just by exchanging looks, Lee Suk-young could get a vague glimpse of Yoo Jung-hyuk's power. It was transcendent. He had to be at this level to be the protagonist of the story. Lee Suk-young took a short breath and opened her mouth. "I want to hold hands with you. Let's gather the remaining rankers together." "Rankers?" "Yes. Isn't your goal to save this world? You need the most powerful lineup of incarnations as possible if you want to clear the next scenario. I can help you. My sponsor is Founder's Mother." Yoo Jung-hyuk's eyes slightly tensed up at the words, Founder's Mother. However, it was just for a moment. The words that came out from Yoo Jung-hyuk's mouth were completely unexpected. "Where is Kim Dokja? Why are you looking for him? I heard you took him." "So why?" Lee Suk-young had a strange feeling at his dismissive attitude towards her suggestion. It was a disturbing feeling that only a mother with a child could detect. She wondered, surely you aren't going to include that child in your 4 Heavenly Kings? "I'm not obliged to answer that. Your personality is exactly the same as what he said." "Kim Dokja told you my story?" "He did. He told me a lot." She stared into Yoo Jung-hyuk's eyes and Lee Suk-young's suspicions increased. Lee Suk-young asked, "I heard that you handed the Paradise achievement to my son. Why did you do that?" "He can save the world if he grows stronger." "Aha, you are going to use him for that?" Lee Suk-young deliberately emphasized a word. It was a relaxed tone, as if she already knew it. Then Yoo Jung-hyuk replied, "Kim Dokja is necessary for this world. I need him. He will be my companion and he will see the end of the scenario." Lee Suk-young's expression slowly hardened. "Companion?" The voice of her young son appeared in her mind. "That jerk, he is a complete psychopath. He knows nothing but how to use people. He will do whatever it takes to reach his goal. This is strange. The Yu Junghyuk I heard about will never talk like you. Does your family like to talk as if they know someone well? Yu Junghyuk pulled out his sword. It was a hard attitude that showed no more dialogue was needed. Give me Kim Dokja. Then I will spare you. Lee Suk-young stared into Yu Junghyuk's blazing eyes and recalled her son's voice. Despite his many complaints, her son always looked somewhat excited. But the story won't continue without him. Ways of Survival is such a novel. At this moment, enlightenment filled Lee Suk-young's head. Incarnation Kim Dokja will be killed by the person he loves most. Lee Suk-young realized the true meaning of this fate. She knew who would kill her beloved son. Maybe it was an insight Lee Suk-young was able to reach because she was used to these types of metaphors and symbolism. I see. Lee Suk-young realized everything and laughed. This wasn't her original plan. Still, the prophecy meant that the plan had to be modified here. I'm sorry, but I can't let you see my son. Why? A mother's responsibility is to control her child if he mixes in with bad people. Lee Suk-young's eyes were cold as she took out the 8-beaded bell. I have to send my son back to reality.